What's going on, guys? Nick Whalen, Alex Barutha here from RotoWire talking fantasy basketball, giving you some waiver wire ads for the week ahead. Alex, we'll dive right into it in a moment. Just want to give a quick schedule evaluation here. Not as many 4-game weeks if you're in a weekly league. As we look ahead here, only 8 teams with 4 games on the schedule. 4 teams only have 2 games. Those 4 teams are Miami, Minnesota, OKC, and Phoenix. So that means we have 18 teams with 3 games in the week ahead. So something to keep an eye out there schedule-wise. I have a list of players. You have a list of players, Alex. I'll let you lead it off. Who do you want to hit first?
I think we should talk about McCain, who just popped off for a career-high 34 points. He now leads and 10 assists, by the way. I may have buried the lead a little bit there. 34 points, 10 assists, 2 steals against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Obviously seeing increased usage with no Tyrese Maxey. Paul George sat out. Joel Embiid sat out, but he leads Rookie of the Year odds now. You know, whether that's deserved or not, he's been fantastic. I mean, he's double-digit scoring each of the past 4 games. Someone that I think, we talked about Philly not having great depth. So even when Maxey, George, and Embiid are all healthy, I do think there's still a place for McCain to play maybe even close to 30 minutes a game. The usage probably won't be as high, but he's been bombing away from 3, and that should at least stick.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. Obviously going to be one of the buzzier players on the waiver wire, and somebody who's available in over 80% of ESPN leagues right now. Over the last 4 games, so essentially since Tyrese Maxey went down, 25.5 points, 4 assists, 4.3 threes per game, shooting 46% from the field, 42% from 3, which are good numbers, certainly for a rookie, but not crazy unsustainable, right? It's not like he's shooting 65% from 3. He's a really good 3-point shooter during his lone season at Duke. So I think this is somewhat sustainable. We do have to keep in mind that Maxey could be back at some point next week. We'll see about that. I would guess probably the week after is a bit more likely. You never know when Paul George is going to miss a game. You never know when Joel Embiid is going to miss a game. And the Sixers are one of those teams with a 4-game week. So it makes a lot of sense to add McCain. I'm going to start with somebody who's not exactly sneaky, Alex, but I want to just mention that Thompson is out there in about 40% of ESPN leagues right now. He's coming off of an 18-11, 2-2-1 game, had 4 steals and 4 blocks against Washington earlier in the week. If you extend that a little bit further, over the last 7 games, he's playing about 29 minutes per game. So that looks like that'll be the case going forward. And Houston is another team that has 4 games next week. So just double check on Thompson. I'll also mention his teammate Tari Eason, who's 30% rostered right now. Obviously, 4 games on the schedule for him as well. Last 7 games for Tari Eason, 15 points, 7 rebounds, 2 steals, over a block and a half per game, 55% from the field. And he's another guy who's locked into consistent minutes in this deep rotation. 25 to 27 minutes is usually where he sits. Really good schedule for Houston as well. Milwaukee, Indiana, Portland, and Portland again next week.
Well, and part of the reason Thompson and Tari Eason are getting so many minutes is because Jabari Smith is falling out of favor with Coach Ime Udoka. Over the past 6 games, 24 minutes per game for Jabari Smith. He's averaging about 8 points, 5 rebounds. To me, Jabari Smith's a straight-up drop. Like, no question about it. At the very least, yes, Eason and Thompson are worth picking up.
Yeah, saying some prayers out there for Jabari Smith fantasy managers. It has not been pretty so far. Who else is on your list?
Someone who's only 5% rostered, and that is Kris Dunn of the LA Clippers, who got the start last night. Yeah, that was against the Houston Rockets. Started over Terrence Mann and stole some minutes from Kevin Porter as well. Kris Dunn in his 31 minutes in the start posted 11 points, 8 assists, 4 rebounds, and 2 steals. He's someone who has been rosterable in deep leagues this season. I'm talking like 16, maybe 20 team leagues. But as has been the case throughout his entire career, has just been a really good source of per minute assists and steals. And if he's going to continue seeing high 20s, low 30s minutes, whether or not he actually starts, I think he's someone that should be added in 12-team or 14-team formats.
It feels like we go down this path every year with him at some point. And yeah, the steals are always going to be appealing there. Clippers still a team that's figuring out that rotation. I'll throw a couple guards your way, Alex. Jordan Clarkson, 31% rostered right now in ESPN. He's got a 3-game week coming up. He's just doing what Jordan Clarkson does, man. Well-rounded production, gives you some steals, some threes. We'll see if the steals ultimately stick. I would guess that'll be a little bit fluky game to game, week to week, but you can always count on the points. You can count on the modest counting stats outside of that. Now, if you're in a category league, the field goal percentage isn't going to be great, so you do have to stomach that. But Clarkson's another one of those guys that I always feel like 2 or 3 times a year, I'm streaming him in, I'm dropping him, I'm picking him up again. He is leading the Jazz, by the way, in usage rate on the year. And Lauri Markkanen is 5th on this team in usage rate. That is very, very concerning. There's a reason I was trying to trade Markkanen in just about every league a couple of weeks ago. Just has not been all that assertive. We're seeing a lot of Jordan Clarkson over these last few games. We got to talk about Brandon Boston for the New Orleans Pelicans, another team with 3 games this week. He's about 20% rostered right now in ESPN leagues. Since entering the starting 5 for the Pels, he's given you 15 points, 5.5 rebounds, over 5 assists, 1.8 steals, 1.4 threes per game. Did struggle against OKC on Wednesday, but that's one of the toughest defensive teams in the NBA. Other than that, he's been rock solid. And I think there's a pretty good chance that none of these injured Pelicans are back next week. After that, Brandon Boston, we'll see where the minutes settle. He probably becomes droppable, but I think you can get one more week out of him.
Yeah, I mean, DeJounte Murray's still out for a bit. McCollum, we're unsure. Like you said, I mean, they need scoring options. And he, past 2 games haven't been great for him, but he contributed in steals, rebounds, and assists. He's out there playing a ton of minutes and racking up stats. I think we should talk about Donovan Clingan. Donovan Clingan, 16% rostered, backup center for the Portland Trailblazers. DeAndre Ayton has missed the past 2 games with a finger sprain. Clingan has stepped in the past 2 games. His first start against Minnesota played okay, 4 points, 6 rebounds, 1 steal, 1 block in 21 minutes. But this past game, he got up to 31 minutes. That's a career high. Career highs in points and rebounds and blocks. 17 points, 12 rebounds, 8 blocks in 31 minutes. That is huge. This is, I think, for as long as Ayton is out, Clingan absolutely has to be rostered. But I think the fact that we finally got this big workload out of Clingan and he had this monster game against Rudy Gobert tells us that if you have a roster spot to stash Clingan, that you should be doing it.
I mean, the 8 blocks, obviously that's an anomaly. It shows us what he's capable of when he's playing 31 minutes. It's not like he's going to average 8 blocks per game, but a monster performance, really in back-to-back games, 2 wins for the Blazers over the Timberwolves. But he has at least 1 block in every game he's played this season. He's played 13 games now, and he's got at least 1 block in each of those. For the most part, he's been playing 12 to 15 minutes a night. So the per minute, block numbers are fantastic. Yeah, even if you're not necessarily comfortable starting him in a shallower league, I think there will be a point this season where you're going to be glad that you picked up Donovan Clingan. I'm going to go back to a name that I think we're going to mention quite a bit this year, Alex, at least until that roster rate rises. Bub Carrington in Washington, still under 20% rostered right now. 3-game week coming up for the Wizards. He continues to start. He continues to play 30-plus minutes every single night for this team. Is going to be an up and down 3-point shooter. You'll have to live with that, but the counting stats have pretty much been there just about every night. He's got 13 total steals on the year. Now, 12 of those 13 steals have come in 3 games combined, where he's had 4 steals in each. So they tend to come in bunches. He did have a 4-steal game against Houston on Monday, but I love Bub Carrington. Can't believe he's still under 20% rostered. A couple more guys here. Ayo Dosunmu in Chicago, 17% rostered. Sometimes a more fun real life player than he is for fantasy, but Chicago is one of just a handful of teams with a 4-game week. He doesn't do a ton on defense. You're really just chasing points and a few assists with Dosunmu. But again, 4-game week for the Bulls. Probably going to be a lot safer going with him than, a mid-level player on a 2 or even a 3-game week.
Yeah, Dosunmu is sort of like the epitome of a 14-team league player, where it's like in 12s, in 14, you probably have to roster him. But yeah, he'll just get you the sort of 12, 4, and 4 pretty consistently. That can be useful. Another guy who's been on my radar for a while, and I can't believe he's still only 11% rostered, Jake LaRavia in Memphis. I mean, the Grizzlies have been dealing with a ton of injuries, and I get that people are like, well, when Bane comes back and when Morant come back and there won't be as many minutes available. LaRavia has been playing well pretty much all season, and look, you may have to drop him when those guys come back, but over the past 9 games, he's averaging 11 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and a steal. That's useful in almost every single format, even in points leagues. That's enough for you to stream him in. And I just think he needs to be more rostered than 11%. Yeah,
obviously for the second straight year, Memphis has had a ton of injuries, but they have been more concentrated at the guard position. LaRavia more of a wing 4 type, and we've seen kind of different variations of these injuries, different combinations of players out throughout the season. And LaRavia's minutes have not really changed all that much. He's usually sitting in that low to mid 20s just about every night. So the return of John Morant and Desmond Bane, it doesn't help him, but I don't think it necessarily boots him out of the rotation by any means. I'll go to the end of my list here, Alex. Goga Bitadze, somebody we mentioned last week. Another 4-game week coming up for Orlando. He's only 14% rostered. And Orlando is one of only, I believe, 2 teams who have 4 games this week and next week. So it's not just a 1-week streamer necessarily. Since moving into the starting lineup, Bitadze putting up 10.5 points, 9.5 boards, 2.5 assists, 1.7 blocks, shooting 70% from the field. His value is somewhat tethered to Wendell Carter. Carter's missed 6 games in a row. We have no idea when he'll be back. He has a history of these minor injuries, turning into something where all of a sudden he's out for a month and a half. So I'm totally comfortable riding Goga Bitadze with back-to-back 4-game weeks. Isaiah Stewart is somebody to keep in mind in deeper leagues. 3-game week coming up for Detroit. He's under 10% rostered right now. Last 5 games for him before getting ejected against Milwaukee on Wednesday night, he was giving you 11 points, 9 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and over a block per game. If you want to get real deep here, Alex, the Milwaukee Bucks do have a 4-game week coming up. If you need threes, AJ Green, Derry Bird, he's averaging 8.2 3-point attempts per game over his last 6. He's making over 4 threes per game in that span. Finally did take his first 2-pointer of the season in that overtime win over Detroit. That was disappointing. Yeah, the Bucks are going to need him to play minutes, frankly. And unfortunately, he does have a bit of a lower ceiling when Damian Lillard is out there, but this Milwaukee team badly needs elite 3-point shooting. And he's one of the only players on that roster that provides it. Last note I have here, make sure you check for Isaiah Hartenstein. I know it's still unclear when he's going to be back, but he's under 30% rostered right now in ESPN leagues. We're coming up on the 1-month mark since the hand injury, so he should be reevaluated in the next week or 2. If you have a roster spot, if you have an IR spot available, I would grab him now because he is going to have a really nice 2-month runway once he's healthy.
Hartenstein 100% needs to be rostered. You got to find a way to get him on your bench, even if you have to sacrifice maybe losing for a week in your head-to-head league, because it's going to pay off in the long run. I got like a handful of names I can just quickly go through here. Marcus Smart, 23% rostered. Obviously, the injuries to Morant and Bane. Smart came back, had a decent game the other night. Maybe worth picking up, even if just for the short term. I cannot believe Peyton Watson in Denver is still only 20% rostered. I know he's not giving you big usage numbers, but he steals and blocks and relatively efficient shooting. Denver had a 2-game week this week. I get it, but you gotta roster Watson. Kevin Huerter has been playing really well. Some of that is steals that I don't think are going to sustain, but Malik Monk's out about 2 weeks, so keep that in mind. Shaedon Sharpe came back for the Portland Trailblazers after missing the start of the season. And Anthony Simons has missed some time. I'm not sure when he's going to be back, but Sharpe is someone to keep an eye on. And then some very, very deep options. Moussa Diabaté for the Charlotte Hornets. One of the best rebounders in the NBA, actually, for Charlotte. And we have no timetable on Mark Williams or Nick Richards. He's averaging 16 rebounds per 36, Diabaté, and giving you about a block and a half, and he's playing about 30 minutes a game recently. Caleb Martin for the 76ers. Maybe when Paul George comes back, when Maxey comes back, it's not there, but he's just stuffing the stat sheet every night. 2 more names. Pat Williams.
All right.
For the Chicago Bulls. I am not a Pat Williams believer, but his volume of shooting is up and his defensive stats are there. I think you just add him while he's doing this, and then if you need to drop him, whatever. And then as a Bucks fan, this really pains me to say, I think you have to consider picking up Malik Beasley of the Detroit Pistons. Tim Hardaway Jr., we're not sure when he's coming back. Fontecchio missed some time. Beasley played 44 minutes in the overtime loss to the Bucks. He's shooting like 11 threes a game over his past handful of games or something like that. If you need threes and you're in a deep league, you have to turn to Beasley.
All right, there we have it. An extensive list of waiver wire options for the week ahead in the NBA. Let us know in the comments if we somehow missed anybody. We would like to know who that is. So put it in there. We love hearing your feedback. We will find this video in your feed every single week. The rest of the season, we'll be doing waiver wire. We'll record this on Thursday. You'll find it on Friday. And again, let us know in the comments if we missed anybody, if there's somebody you're targeting in your leagues, and make sure you subscribe to the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball YouTube channel. That's where you'll find all of our videos. That's where you'll find all of our live podcasts as well. They'll be archived there. RotoWire Fantasy Basketball. Just click that little subscribe button right there. We'll talk to you next week.